Now we take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Labour Party's Peter Obi on Thursday held a closed-door meeting with former President Goodluck Jonathan in Abuja. Obi, who disclosed the visit in a post on his official X handle, describes Jonathan as an elder brother, statesman and leader, noting that their discussion centered on national issues and the state of the nation. There have been reports of former President Jonathan joining the 2027 presidential race, although he has not made any official statement on whether he will run and under which party he is likely to run. Peter Obi, who has expressed support for the African Democratic Congress ADC coalition, is yet to formally resign from the Labour Party or declare his membership of the ADC. Moving on, suspended Senator Natasha has given the clerk to the National Assembly up till Monday, September 15, to reconsider his earlier position not to allow her to resume legislative duties after serving out her 6-month suspension or face court action in both official and personal capacities. The Kogi Central Senator, in a letter by her lawyer, Senior Advocate Michael Nina, rejects the assertion that no administrative action can be taken at the moment to enable her resume on grounds that the matter is sub judice. She says this is untenable and a gross misuse and misapplication of the rule of sub judice. Also, the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC constitutional lawyer and Senior Advocate of Nigeria SAN, Professor Mike Ozekome, have strongly condemned Senate's decision to continue barring the Kogi State Senator from resumption and performing her sacred constitutional duties even after her controversial suspension has expired. The NLC warned it may be forced to mobilize its members and moral authority to resist alleged slide into autocracy. Away from that, we go on to oil and gas. The Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, has accused the Dangote Group of violating a peace agreement brokered by the Department of State Services, warning that a nationwide strike may be unavoidable. NUPENG has placed its members on red alert, ready to resume suspended industrial action. The DSS brokered a resolution involving 3 federal ministers upheld workers' rights to unionize. NUPENG says a day after the agreement, the Dangote Group ordered its tanker drivers to remove union stickers and later denied them access to the refinery. The union condemned the move as a violation of national labor laws and warned against undermining agreements sanctioned by the government. Insecurity. The Federal High Court in Abuja has convicted Mahmoud Usman, also known as Abu Bara, an Ansaru commander, sentencing him to 15 years imprisonment. Usman pleaded guilty to illegal mining, which he used to fund arms procurement for terrorism and kidnapping. Justice Emeka Nwite ordered his remand in the custody of the Department of State Services pending trial for 31 other charges. Usman and co-accused Abubakar Abba faced 32 counts related to a 2022 attack on Wawa Cantonment, Niger State, causing mass casualties. Meanwhile, Justice Emeka Nwite has scheduled October 21 for trial. In a separate case, the DSS also arraigned a suspected gun runner, Huzaifa Haruna, on charges of allegedly transporting 7 M16 assault rifles from Dogo village in Barkin Ladi local government area of Plateau State.
The first defendant in particular has 31 other counts to defend. And the second defendant did not plead guilty to any count. So to ensure that we are able to protect our witnesses, to ensure the security, they have to be remanded at the custody of the Department of State Services. We don't plea bargain. If they approach us with a proposal for plea bargain, yes, we will consider it, but we were not approached, and we have no reason to explore plea bargain to initiate it, so to speak. But if they do approach us with a proposal, it will be considered in accordance with the provisions of the law.
We also arraigned another suspect, and that's in line with the Plateau matter for guns and ammunition, racketing. So the security of our country is of utmost importance to us, and as we speak right now, we are on top of it. We are making sure that at every point in time, we'll make sure that each and every one of these criminals, wherever they are, however far they run, we'll always catch them. So we are happy with what we are doing so far.
All right, the Court of Appeal sitting in Abuja Thursday appointed the Chief Registrar of the court to take possession and secure any cargo of crude oil on board FPSO Tamara Tokoni against expropriation, waste, dissipation and/or fraudulent disposition pending the hearing and determination of a suit between First Bank of Nigeria and General Hydrocarbons Limited.
The registrar is to liaise with the Admiralty Marshal in carrying out the responsibility. A three-man panel led by Justice Hamma Barka, while allowing the appeal filed by First Bank, said the interest of justice in the case demanded that the rest be preserved pending the determination of the case still pending at the High Court and before an arbitration panel. The court also issued an order directing the sale of the cargo of crude oil on board FPSO Tamara Tokoni upon the storage tanks being full, and to pay the proceeds of each sale into a single interest-yielding escrow account in the name of the Chief Registrar of the Court of Appeal pending the hearing of the suit before the trial court and or before the Court of Arbitration. The FPSO has crude oil belonging to GHL, Con Oil, and NNPCL. The court also set aside the order of the Federal High Court, Port Harcourt, between the parties vacating the orders of the court made on the 9th of January 2025 for the arrest of the second respondent. First Bank claims GHL owes its $225.8 million debt. However, GHL strongly denies the claim, saying FBN severally reached the 2021 subrogation agreement and no payment is due. In the appeal, GHL accused FBN of abusing an ex parte freezing order when it selectively released part of the crude in the FPSO to Con Oil and NNPC. The Court of Appeal has now stopped all that, giving all possession and control of all crude in the FPSO to the Chief Registrar, assisted by the Admiralty Marshal of the Court of Appeal.
Okay, so there's an update. We've been following very closely the First Bank and GHL court proceedings, Rufai. But beyond that, of course, we've touched different stories across the country. Senator Natasha Akpoto-Uduaghan's lawyers writing the clerk of the Senate. We also looked at an update on security. We often talk about going to court, charging these criminals, and we see that happen. And of course, Peter Obi and former President Goodluck Jonathan in closed-door meeting. Your take on some of these stories, or all of the stories, if you like.
So a couple of things. Let me move to, as regards GHL and First Bank, probably I think clarity will come when the CTC comes out. You know, we'll be able to get clarity, but they have been at it for a while as regards, you know, matters that they transacted businesses with one another, and they're talking about, you know, oil that was supposed to, that was taken already, that they will sell the oil that was taken from, I think, GHL and NNPC and Ghana. They'll take the oil, they'll sell it and put it on escrow until the rest is determined. The rest is still the substantive matter about the debt and the agreements that they had among each other. But on this, I work for the CTC to be able to come out, to be able to get proper clarity on it, because there's been reportage across every part, you know, on this. But let me talk about Natasha Akpoto's matter. And yesterday, I made a point that isn't it the height of hypocrisy for the Senate that couldn't listen to Justice Ogwatu when he gave that interim injunction to cease the process of suspension, that waited till the 20th before they got their rebuttal as regards that judgment, to now go ahead today to say it's because the case is in court. After people still tried to recall Natasha, after all the shenanigans she went through. So it just shows that the fight is deeper, and it's a fight of ego, and that's why everybody is stepping in, that at least let this woman come back. Let the people she's representing feel a sense that the legislator representing them is doing something in the Senate. But I would like to tell some peoples and parties that are concerned that you are not bigger than God. And power is transient. Maybe the moment you understand that, your life will change. And at some point, you think you are the Lord of the Manor today. You will not be there tomorrow. I can give you history is replete with people that thought they had it all 1 minute and they have it all tomorrow. So that's a word for the wise. Just like NUPENG. You see, Nigeria is a very interesting country. It's a country where people that are used to free money don't get their way. They start to make trouble. Because that's exactly what NUPENG is doing. After there was a resolution, then NUPENG claimed that because Dangote refinery said that they should remove NUPENG stickers. Be here, you know. NUPENG went ahead to block another man's refinery, another man's property, to block the truck drivers from coming in. And you expect not to have a reaction? And now you are saying 2 days after you're going to renege on an agreement signed with DSS and the likes. So, you know, like I said it before, and this was the same NUPENG that tried to sabotage Dangote by disrupting the lifting of his product in the first place. Like I said it before, NUPENG definitely has an interest. And when you look at it, I think the EFCC should even step in. And let us have the account of all the top honchos in NUPENG. And let's run the account and see what is even going on there. Because I hear there's another fat money they collect from trucks. So for every tanker that passes, NUPENG have their collection. It's not that the collection, they used to do anything for the welfare of the people. So when people are so used to free money, that's what heralds our country. And that's why our country can be turned into a spectacle like this. You see, Nigeria is fast becoming a circus. And that's what happens when you have a lot of, you know, people that act like clowns. Because when you have too many clowns, you have a circus. That's exactly what's happening in our country. A man spent over 20 billion to put into a refinery. He spent close to $1 trillion in buying those trucks. Maybe you think that those new trucks Dangote is buying to be able to effectively distribute is free? That he's going to start distribution on the 15th of September. Do we think that those trucks are free? It's over 700 billion of money he doesn't have, which is an investment into the business. But people are feeling higher and they feel that they know it all. So we'll see how this pans out. Anyway, they've said they're going to go on strike. We are going to see. And it speaks volumes about the labor unions. And you see, that's why a lot of people don't trust them to a large extent. But when they do well, we will commend them. Concerning the Natasha matter that NLC is saying that they will step in and I think that's a good fight. But another fight, I think they should research. Jonathan meeting Peter, or Peter Obi going to meet Jonathan. He's going to meet his brother. They are very good friends. We can't forget the role Peter Obi played in Jonathan's campaign. So it's not today that they have very mutual respect for one another. I'm talking about 20. They've always been very good friends and they've always had this fraternity of some sort. But whatever they do, you should also remember that the interests of Nigerians matter a lot in who is going to emerge in the 2027 elections. That's all I'm going to say because of time.
Okay, let me start with the Natasha Akpoti's program. I think it's very embarrassing that every day we have to talk about Natasha Akpoti. I don't think that the subject is that, compelling and desperate, because I think that at the stage where we are, that matter can be easily resolved. The last time we discussed this matter, I said, look, the Senate is not going to resume until September 23. When the Senate resumes by September 23, I expect that this is a matter that should be dealt with. In the light of the advice of Justice Binta Nyako, who had made it very clear that, look, the people that suffer are the constituents that Senator Akpoti Uduaghan is representing. To continue to disenfranchise those people will no longer look, good. So by September 23, when the Senate returns from its recess, I imagine and I advise that she should just be allowed to return to her position. There should be no argument in that regard. That would be the reasonable thing to do. And that's why, I align myself with Professor Mike Ozekome, who was also quoting Justice Binta Nyaku's advice. And I hope that the leadership of the Senate will be so advised. However, it is not in the place of Senator Akpoti Uduaghan to dictate to the Senate of the Federal Republic how the matter should be resolved in terms of the internal processes of the National Assembly itself. Now, the story today says she has now given the clerk of the National Assembly a 4-day ultimatum and all of that. The clerk of the National Assembly says, oh, the matter is sub judice. We have cases in the Court of Appeal until that has been resolved. But I don't think that is the clerk of the National Assembly that even has the authority. The authority lies not even with the chairman of the National Assembly, who is Senator Godswill Akpabio. It lies with our own colleagues in that Senate. And it is only when they, come back from recess that they will table that matter, and that matter will be resolved. It should be resolved. I insist on that, point of view. Now, if she continues to do a media war every day, Natasha, and we waste and put time here talking about something that should just be resolved easily. Now, that will be counterproductive because I'm saying this, that diplomacy can be applied. There can be some diplomatic maneuvers, this conflict, they can be resolved diplomatically. And then after September 23, everybody moves on. Now, there are cases that the clerk of the National Assembly is referring to. Now, the senator, Senator Akpoti Uduaghan, appealed against all the decisions of the court, either with regard to contempt or the right of the National Assembly to decide its own matters. Then the Senate cross-appealed. Now, I was saying yesterday, look, all these parties, they can remove all those cases. But Senator Natasha Akpoti is being advised by our lawyers that, in fact, they will file more cases. Do they want the matter to end? Are they themselves thinking of the interest of the people that she's representing? More so as she herself is saying that there are urgent issues about mining, about other matters that she wants to canvass on the floor of that Senate. So both she and her lawyers, they should just look at this issue from another perspective, where they are not obliged to take my advice, unsolicited as it is. But I think that there may be diplomatic ways in which this matter can be resolved. As for Mr. Peter Obi visiting President Jonathan, well, Mr. Peter Obi said they had a friendly, fruitful conversation. He did not discuss any details. Now, anybody reading minutes into whatever they discuss, that's just pure speculation. Both of them are leaders in their own right. Their names have been mentioned in relation to the 2027 general elections. I think it would be presumptuous for anybody to say, oh, I think this is what they discussed. There's no story there. If there's any story, when that story ripens, both parties involved, would come and tell us. So I will not waste unnecessary saliva over that. Now, as for the Ansaru, two of the leaders of the Ansaru, a man who calls himself the Emir of Ansaru, and his chief of staff, a man called Mahmouda. Now, when they were arrested by the authorities, the Nigerian authorities, we praised the office of the NSA, we praised the DSS, we praised the military, because it was as a result of effective collaboration among the security agencies that they were able to burst the bubble of these terrorists. And we said at that time that these are not people that should be given Ashwebi in the name of rehabilitation, the kind of thing we saw under the Buhari administration. Now that the matter has been treated expeditiously, that the culprits have been taken to court, I think that the Tinubu administration is sending across a strong signal that his own administration, when it comes to the fight against terrorism, is not going to give people pepper soup and jollof rice. That the rule of law will be maintained. That those who attack Nigeria and the resources of Nigeria will be brought to face the full wrath of the law. 32 charges against the Ansaru leader, the Al-Qaeda man, and his chief of staff. Only one matter seems to have been determined at the Federal High Court in this matter. And then the argument in court yesterday was about whether he should be in the custody of the DSS or not and all of that. But I think that the big story is the fact that we see a government that says, if you do the crime, you do the time. And that terrorism is not something that Nigeria can deal with. In another time, a few years ago, this same Mahmouda and this same Emir of Ansaru, they will have given them, they will have told them that, I think even one state provided terrorists with wives, potential wives, and said that the women should make a choice. I mean, the kind of things we have seen in this country. I think that the Tinubu administration, under this NSA, under this DSS, under this EFCC, should insist that people who want to bring terror here, yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, was the anniversary of 9/11. Yesterday. And we saw how, 9/11 changed the whole narrative about the fight against global terror. And I was saying that, in fact, NATO, for the first time, was forced to invoke Article 5 of the NATO treaty. So the Nigerian government should continue to show determination over this matter. Finally, you mentioned the GHL and First Bank. Look, these are commercial matters, commercial disputes. On this table, we have talked about commercial disputes. Sometimes commercial disputes, there are other ways of resolving them. Matters don't always have to go through the entire court process. I think that the parties involved can explore the option of arbitration. I think arbitration is already on the table. They can also consider the option of alternative dispute resolution. That would be mediation. So there are other options that can be involved. But if there's a lot of conflict and ego involved, then then the matter will go all the way to the Supreme Court. But some of these commercial matters, I think I said in the case of Enugu State and Sujimoto, they can be resolved, but it has to do with the parties involved and what exactly that they want. But I cannot comment on the details because I've not read the full details. As for the Dangote refinery, the Dangote refinery is saying that they operate in a free trade zone and that they have special contractual obligations with their staff. However, in the statement issued by Tony Chejina says that, look, the workers in Dangote refinery, they have the right to unionize because unionism is voluntary. 2, he says that there is no alleged threat to workers in Dangote refinery because they can choose where they want to belong. The obligation of the company is to provide welfare. And the argument about monopoly and capitalism does not apply in a free market context where you have free entry, free exit. Now, in addition to all the points made in the 2-page press statement by Dangote Refinery today, Dangote Refinery now also says, in another report that I read, that from Monday they are going to deploy 10,000 CNG power trucks, and that the price of fuel will come down from to about 820 naira per liter in the southwest region to about 851 naira, in Edo, in Kwara, in Ekiti, across that band and the Federal Capital Territory. The one that interests us is any Nigerian who will invest here and make life easier for us, whether it is petrol, or it is cement, or it is Indomie, or it is whatever, even the cost of newspapers. That is the person we, the long-suffering people of Nigeria, we support.
We, the long-suffering people.
Yes, we have been suffering for long. Now, but I always preach accommodation. Yeah. The first round of negotiations and deal with NUPENG will seem to have collapsed. But in the statement by Chejina, it looks like there are even internal issues within, the labor unions and NUPENG itself. Anyway, so many topics. You bring 5 topics, you expect me to... The final point I want to make on the Natasha point is that NSC is saying they will go on strike. NSC should not go on strike. This one does not concern them. Instead, they should try to make peace and try to see how diplomacy can be used to resolve the matter so that Senator Nakutia Uduagan can go back, to our office. But to say they will further complicate the matter, they will mobilize. They should go and find more serious things to do.
Okay, so there's, I think, about 3 stories this morning. The same theme or the same resolution will seem to apply. Whether it be, as Dr. Abati recommended for the GHL and First Bank situation, where arbitration coming to the negotiation table might bring about a better outcome, as opposed to, media posts, and then, of course, court cases, which could further deepen hostilities between the 2 parties. Perhaps a more diplomatic channel of resolution ought to be considered, even though it's still ongoing, and perhaps would bring about a better resolution to the matter on the table. But beyond that, I think also with Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan versus the Senate, the same thing could be applied. Also with the Dangote and the NUPENG workers, the same thing could be applied. Let's get to the negotiation table. Let's talk rather than these hostilities. Diplomacy is often the best way out of issues like this. Having said that, let me now take some of the key issues and some of the lessons that we can learn from these incidents so that even though we want to go to the negotiation table, there are also some fundamentals that ought to be upheld and considered. Let me start with the Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan story. I think it's a very critical conversation, and here's the reason why. As described by a few people who have decided to lend their thoughts and commentaries on this particular matter, whether it's from the NLC to, I believe, Woman Manifesto, so an umbrella body for women in Nigeria, or it is Professor Mike Ozekome, or it is even Afenifere, who've also come out to make a statement on this. They are all united in saying this one thing. If we don't deal with this matter properly, it sets a bad political precedent for Nigeria. This is what Afenifere said. A lot of people have, and one manifesto says it is legislative authority being abused. NLC says it is an assault on democracy itself. And that is the reason why we must talk about this. It is not about one individual. And as I said yesterday, it is about an institution and how we do not want to make an autocracy out of an institution that ought to be upheld and respected. The senator has been away for 6 months based on the suspension. I recall that when the suspension was given at the initial stage, we questioned whether or not it was high-handedness in terms of in the area of the level of punishment given for her actions in the Senate. In a number of quarters, it was said that it was to ensure that that sort of thing would not happen again. So a deterrent to ensure that people who dared to rise up to speak against the Senate would not have the opportunity to do so again. We don't want that to happen in the Senate. We want a Senate where our senators who represent the interests of the people who elected them into office can be able to speak up, especially where there's a seeming marginalization. And in the case where allegations have been made, it ought to be investigated, and we need to see the full length of the investigation and see an outcome. A lot of times, things get buried under the carpet, all in the name of resolution in Nigeria, and at the end of the day, we are able to repeat the same issues at a future date because we sweep under the carpet matters that ought to be fully resolved. And so that is a matter that we need to talk about. And that's why I can understand the NLC saying that they will mobilize, because we are not just defending an individual, or they are not just defending an individual, they are defending the institution of the Senate. And I believe that whereby the rules and regulations are just on the preserve of one person, whether it be the Senate president for now, or a committee, or a clerk, it ought to be challenged so that we build strong institutions in Nigeria. Now, on that matter as well, Kogi Central representatives have been denied for the last 6 months. And so going back to the advice given by Justice Binta Nyako, perhaps we should now review the rules of the Senate to ensure that when a senator or representative breaks one of the laws, it should not affect the people, the hundreds or thousands of people who ought to have their voices heard. Look for other punishments or look for other deterrents or a shorter time space rather than a long spell where critical matters affecting that senatorial district is left unattended to because there's no one there to speak for them. Every single Nigerian deserves for their voice to be heard on the floor of the Senate or in the National Assembly. These are the things that we must fight for. It's not because of any one individual or because she matters, or I mean she does in the grand scheme of things, but I'm saying that it is more about a push for stronger institutions. That's what we're looking at. Now, going on to the Dangote and the NUPENG situation, it's the same thing. When we talked about when we looked at the negotiations that happened in the DSS, and they said they chose a neutral venue that was secure, and they were able to come to some form of agreement. We praised that move because it was not just a threat to a business. It was a matter of national security. In the event that NUPENG goes on strike or the NLC joins them or other union join them, we know the hardship it causes to Nigeria when it comes to fuel energy security and how we do not want to go to go back to the dark days of fuel queues, uncertainties, increase in food prices in the market as a result of this impasse between both parties. And that's why it was essential for us to deal with it. Nevertheless, and so even if I understand Dangote's position and where they talk about the benefit the CNG buses will bring, the welfare package they have for the staff, and I applaud it. It's meant to provide 60,000 direct jobs, creation of jobs. It's meant to ensure that the workers who work with them have very good benefits, pensions, HMO, housing loans after 5 years of good service, based on the report or the statement by Mr. Anthony Chiejina. But also very importantly, we must also protect the rights of the workers. Did Mr. Dan Tata indeed remove the union stickers and prevent or force the hands of his drivers to drive in? These are the matters we need to deal with, because at the end of the day, the rule of law must be respected. Nobody ought to be above the law. And so Dangote has a responsibility to ensure that they keep to the end of their own bargain following that meeting. And also, the unions must not hold Nigerians to ransom as a result of selfish interest that would be God as a result of Dangote coming on board. So many issues to tackle this morning, but I really hope that in the course of today's show, perhaps during the World Brief and newspaper headlines, we can delve deeper with the Ansaru, with security and other things that must be done to ensure that we're able to sustain this win when it comes to the fight against terrorism.